We're about to start the live stream.
All right, go ahead.
The camera is green. The camera turns red. Live.
All right, well, welcome back, everybody, to another week, another episode of my show. I'm Jordan, and this is Taking a Different Perspective, where I talk, discuss, review, and analyze all things film and media. So I have really been looking forward to today's episode. In fact, I think that this might be my most anticipated episode that I've done thus far. I mean, you know, just within the few short weeks that everything that has been going on, my mind has just been in a whirlwind from all the thoughts that have ran through it and that I've also jotted down when it comes to this man known as Kanye West. I think that this entire situation, so who Kanye is, what he once was, everything that's happened in the past and everything that's going on now is just so incredibly fascinating to watch. Now, I don't really know exactly when everything started, right? There was a time where we weren't talking about Kanye, and then that's all anybody was talking about. But I personally didn't become interested in this whole situation until that day that he had put up that picture of him wearing that Make America Great Again hat. And that's when my ears had perked up and I was like, Kanye, what are you doing? And then when he put out that Poopity Scoop song, that's when I was like, all right, Kanye, game recognizes game. But, I didn't immediately write him off, and I still haven't completely written him off, at this point. In fact, it's actually the complete opposite, but I know that that's not the case for a lot of other people, right? I know that a lot of other people, are disappointed by what he's done. They're hurt. They've canceled Kanye. And I say all that to say that, I get it, right? I don't blame you all, for why you would be opposed to what it is that Kanye has become or what it is he's doing right now. But I do think that me not being attached to this man and his music in the way that a lot of people have been for years has proven to be a bit advantageous for me. That isn't to say that I'm not a fan of his music, because I am, but I was never really a stan for Kanye the rapper like I know a lot of you are or were. I didn't listen to The College Dropout until I got to college. I want to say it was like the end of sophomore year, to be exact. I think that 808s is his best album, and it really wasn't until a year ago that I really got into his music. And so I guess I'm not your typical or average Kanye fan, if there even is one. But yeah, I do think that, like I said, because of that detachment and because my introduction or just overall understanding to Kanye West wasn't through some classic album that I listened to for years on end that I hold near and dear to me, but just through Kanye West being Kanye West, that it has allowed for me to, like I said, remain detached from everything that is going on right now to where I can take on a more objective point of view. And so, yeah, the way in which I view this entire situation is pretty much the same way in which I view movies, with, all of their characters, villains, motivations, underlying themes, all of that kind of stuff. And yes, I understand that, to some people that maybe that kind of detachment may not necessarily be viewed as being the best thing, right? Because what it is that I'm detaching myself from is still real life, right? It has real consequences, but I don't mind detaching myself in that way. And I also love to observe. And so whenever I see a situation arise and unfold before my very eyes, like this one has, and I get to see, all the different areas in which this situation can and already has said something about like society or culture or the human condition or whatever, best believe I'm gonna get out my pad, my pen, and my popcorn, and I'm gonna just be getting it all out, right? And like I said, I think that this Kanye situation is the perfect situation to do so. So you could say whatever you wanted to about Kanye, but what you cannot deny is this man's influence and impact on, I'm not even just gonna say the culture, because I feel like to say the culture would minimize it, but just society, period. You could say that Kanye is one of the worst people to ever exist. You could say that he is the scumbag of the earth. But just the fact that you have such an extreme opinion of him in that way already says so much. For better or worse, Kanye gets the people talking. He really polarizes the people. And it's really amazing to me how one man really has all of that power. And that pun is very much intended. And so, everything that I say today is my take on the situation. And so, I know that I don't know the 100% truth of the situation. I'm not Kanye. I don't know Kanye. I've never spoken to Kanye, and I don't even know how I would go about speaking to Kanye. But even though I don't know his true intentions, I still believe in everything that I will be saying today. And so, like I said, though I don't know the 100% truth of the situation, I do think that I have a pretty good idea. Besides that, I know that the stuff that I'm going to be saying, that there may be some people out there that aren't going to agree with everything that I say. And guess what? That's okay. So I thought that I would go ahead and, really get into, my take on this whole situation by essentially getting to the main point, which is that Kanye has a point. Kanye has a lot of points. Do I agree with everything that Kanye has said or done up until this point? No, but that does not negate the fact that Kanye has made a lot of great points. Where the problem arises in this situation is in the ways in which he goes about communicating said points, whether it's verbally, whether it's through tweets, whether it's through materialistic expressions, or whether it's through other actions. The problem lies within his methods. And the problem with the fact that the problem lies in his methods is the fact that Kanye does not and has not ever cared about the methods. Kanye has never been about making sure that he takes the proper course of action in pretty much anything that he does. Kanye's not a thinker in that way, right? He's much more of a doer, and then maybe reflect on it afterward, right? So we saw that with the George Bush doesn't care about Black people. We saw that with the, hey, yo, Taylor, I'm gonna let you finish, but Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time. Then, he gave us the infamous Kanye shrug. And then, we saw that with the Beck and the Grammy situation. We saw that with the, you ain't got the answer, Sway. You ain't got the answers, right? But even though I do think that some incidences had more points than others, I still do think that at the end of the day, there is a lot of truth to what he says. And this isn't to excuse his behavior by any means, right? Because he still lives within this world, right? And this world has its own, way of doing things. But I pretty much liken that whole, problem of people not really liking Kanye's method or however you want to look at it as if, let's say, you're on a diet, right? And you decide to, and you're hungry. So you decide to go to McDonald's. And you go to McDonald's and you're like, because I'm on a diet, I want a salad. So you get the salad. You eat the salad. And then for some reason, you decide to read the packaging on the salad and you get upset because you see that the salad had way more calories than you thought. Yes, you can get mad at McDonald's for A, even giving you unhealthy food to begin with. You can get mad at McDonald's for B, even kind of falsely advertising their food in that way. But at the same time, you did go to McDonald's looking for something healthy. And that's pretty much how I view this whole Kanye situation. Yes, we can still very much debate his methods. Yes, we can still very much be opposed to his methods. But Kanye has never been about making sure that his methods work for everybody. So why would he start now? As long as it works for Kanye, Kanye's good. And I do think that that kind of selfishness is and will be his downfall within this world. Now, personally speaking, okay, that's not where my problem lies with this situation. Yes, I don't agree with his methods. I think that a lot of his methods need work. And it is frustrating to, see him use the method that he continues to use and to also not care about it because, and then this now gets into my problem, because the method is the only thing that people are and have been focusing on. The method is the only thing that people give a reaction to. And I have a problem with that because I haven't seen any real conversation or dialogue about what it is that Kanye is actually saying, about the points that he's actually attempting to make, or about, the intention behind his actions. No, though I have, seen some videos on YouTube that I do think that I kind of had to, actively search out for myself, where I did see people talking about the things that I would like to see more people talking about. But when it comes to social media and when it comes to these headlines, right, so the overall cultural conversation, I don't see anybody really attempting to make sense of the points that he's getting at. And so I'm sure that, someone can hear that and they'll say, well, it's not as if the things that he's saying it's not as if the things that Kanye is saying are extremely profound. And you know what? You're right. But what you also have to remember is that you are not the only person to exist. Personally speaking, Kanye has not said anything that was extremely profound to me, because, I've already come to, the realization of those things on my own, or I've seen other people talking about them before. But I know that I'm not the only person to exist, right? And so when you look out at the world, right, and you look at how it's operating, it's obvious that there are a ton of people that don't know, or that need to be reminded of the very things that Kanye is talking about. And I think that the fact that no one is really giving attention to those things is sad. But, okay, there are a lot of buts to a lot of what I have to say about this whole conversation. But again, I do not blame y'all. All right, I get it. And when I say y'all, I want for y'all to understand that I'm not like creating this, this wall between me and you. I very much am a part of this conversation too, right? Because I'm human. But yeah, I don't want for y'all to get mixed up in the semantics. But I don't blame y'all, right? I get it. We still live in this world that has its own rules and guidelines that we still have to live by, for better or worse. And everything that Kanye is doing has very real and more immediate effects for people like us, right? For the common folk, for the people that are part of everyday society, for the people who, in the grand scheme of things, really don't have a lot of money, right? The have-nots, or the proletariat, right? I'm gonna go ahead and bring in, sociological term for y'all, the proletariat. But yeah, so when I see opposition to, say, one of the ideas that Kanye is trying to make or point out, which is the idea of loving your enemy, or at the very least getting next to or near them so that you can talk to them and understand them. It's like, I get it, but at the same time, it's like, like I've seen people say something along the lines of, I don't have time to hear the other side if the other side wants to do me harm. That pain and that line of thinking is very real, and it's very valid, right? Of course, you don't want to put yourself in a situation to where someone else can hurt you, whether emotionally, mentally, or physically. Right? Because we're already dealing with that in our everyday lives, right? We're already smack dab in the middle of it. And, we definitely feel the effects the most from those ideologies that the other side aligns themselves with, or that they sometimes, put into action. But what you also have to remember is that is very limited thinking. And I think that what has been lost on both sides when it comes to my problem, so basically, the people that are giving more attention to the method versus Kanye himself, is this lack of embracing of duality, or this lack of recognizing the importance of duality. Those thoughts, like I said, those thoughts and feelings, like I said, are very real. But at the end of the day, what does that kind of thinking really accomplish, right? You can look out the world and you can say, wow, the world is really messed up. And you know that one of the reasons why it's so messed up is because of all this division. So you can think to yourself, wow, I wish that things were better. I want to make the world better. And one of the ways to do that is to get rid of the division. But if you are not open to talking to people to understand, and you're more so talking to people to refute what it is that they're doing, it's not going to get rid of that division. And that goes for both sides, meaning the liberals and the conservatives. And so I think that, once we start to operate from that place of understanding, which is at the end of the day rooted in love, which is one of the biggest points that Kanye is attempting to make, that I think that real change can actually start to happen, right? You can't continue to operate from this place of fear because you're afraid of how someone else is going to react to you. You cannot control what other people are going to do, but what you can control is how you move throughout this world. So though, you could walk up to your enemy and say, I love you, or I want to understand what it is that you're doing. And they can, they may say, I don't know, like they may say F you or something, right? That fear of them essentially rejecting what it is that you're giving them, that unconditional love, is very real. But I think that once you start to, like I said, operate from that place of unconditional love, that is when you begin to take on another perspective that is outside of you, that is outside of us. And what I mean by that is outside of this human or physical world, right? One of the things that we have to remember is that there is more to existence than just this, than what we are experiencing. There are whole galaxies, there are whole universes, there are other dimensions, places, spaces, planets, all that kind of stuff that exist outside of this truth and this life. Now, in terms of the slavery comment, all right, do I know if Kanye thinks that the slavery from the 20th century was a choice? No. Do I think that Kanye was referring to that kind of slavery when he made that comment on TMZ? No. Do I think that Kanye was perhaps talking about a different kind of slavery, maybe perhaps a mental slavery that we are all currently in right now, but again, because his method for communicating the point wasn't the best, the point itself became overshadowed again by the method? Absolutely. I do not believe that Kanye was talking about 20th century slavery when he made that comment. What I do believe is that he was referring to the effects and or the trauma from that kind of slavery, which has then lent itself to the kind of mental imprisonment that, I mean, you know, we all as a people are in, but looking more specifically at Black people, that we as Black people are currently experiencing. And so I thought that I would say, that I would recite the actual quote that Kanye said in this interview. He said, "You hear about slavery for 400 years. 400 years, that sounds like a choice. Like you was there for 400 years and that's all of y'all." So first thing that I want to bring into this conversation is the fact that the American slave trade started in 1619 and ended in 1865. We are now in the year 2018. 1619 to 2018 is about 400 years. So I just want to put that out there. But yeah, what I think that Kanye was talking about, or was more so getting at, was our association with the past and how that association and or that relationship with the past, right, and how we say things like when we were slaves, even though we ourselves have never personally experienced slavery in that sense, and just our constant dialogue about the past is detrimental because, you know, we're not focused on teaching about the future. We're not focused on, you know, really teaching people how to succeed. And that is more so talking about like the mainstream media, right? And it's the same kind of argument that you know, where people say, well, why do we have to have all of these slave narratives? And it's something that I also kind of talked about when I talked about Janelle Monáe's short film last week, right? And how when it comes to futuristic stories, it's very rare that you see a futuristic story that shows Black people in the future. Oh, but you want to see a story about Black people in the past, we're going to go ahead and, you know, give you that money. And so in that sense, okay, that kind of thinking and that argument that, you know, we should get over slavery and more so focus on the past does hold merit. But, okay, but, all right, I want for y'all to understand that there is a huge but, all right, because I feel like y'all are getting your fingers ready. They hovering over that caps lock and that exclamation point. I feel it, but let me explain, all right? Because life isn't that simple, and because life will never be that simple, it just does not work that way. I think where people go wrong with that statement is that while, yes, in order to move forward, you have to let go of the past. When you look at America, we can't get over the past because we have a country and we as a people have not done what we need to do in order to get over the past. That statement alone implies that we're over the past and that we've truly understood it, the ramifications of it, and that there is real change. But, you know, when you go ahead and look at, you know, America's timeline, right? So starting with slavery, there was slavery. Then we had the Civil War. Then we got the Emancipation Proclamation, and America was like, you know, slavery, that's so 1700s. We're past that. We're progressive now, I guess you could say. And then as time went on, America realized, they were like, well, you know what? Maybe we do kind of have a racism problem. So that's when we got the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Once that was passed, America was like, you know what? We did our job. We're good. We're colorblind. We can now go ahead and move on. But it's like, wait a minute, we can't really move on because there are whole systems and institutions that give life to the very rhetoric that we're supposedly over. What I feel like I can basically liken that to the situation of, say, you know, you're hanging out with somebody, right? And then all of a sudden y'all get into an argument. And then the other person starts saying some stuff that hits below the belt. Like they start saying some really, really grimy stuff. And so then y'all storm out of the room. And then they come into your room 15 minutes later and they say, you know what? I was kind of out of line. Let's go get some ice cream. And it's like, wait a minute, fam. We can't do that because there's a whole elephant in this room that needs to be assessed and that we need to really look at. Right? It's like we have to look at the elephant, or assess and really figure out. We have to look at the elephant. We have to acknowledge the fact that there is an elephant in the room. We have to be willing to discuss the fact that there is an elephant in the room. We have to talk about how and why the elephant got here, the effects of the elephant being here. We have to then formulate a plan to get the elephant out of the room. Once we formulate the plan, then we have to actually execute that plan to get the elephant out of the room. And then maybe once that's all said and done, when the elephant is actually out of the room, put up some kind of statue or sign or something that reminds us of that elephant that was in the room so that that elephant doesn't come back in that room again. So make it an elephant-free zone. But because America was impatient, right, America was like, we're going to look at the elephant being racism. We're going to look at it. We're going to acknowledge it. And then we're going to just go ahead and execute the plan. But because America missed out on a big chunk of that timeline, because there was no real discussion about it, the plan doesn't hold nearly as much weight as one would think or hope that it does or did. And we know that to be true because we're in the year 2018 still dealing with things that we dealt with 50 years ago. But going ahead and bringing Kanye back into the situation, Kanye is on the side of, not focusing on the past and focusing more on the future. Right. And again, where the problem lies is in his not embracing and or recognizing the importance of duality. Kanye is essentially operating from this kind of metaphysical realm that, like I said, is outside of this physical and human realm. But and it's in that metaphysical realm where, those universal truths do exist. And so things are pretty black or white. Things are either this or they're that. But then when you bring yourself down to this reality, right, where truths are no longer perceived as being universal, because what life then does is it complicates all of that. It then turns truths into this subjective thing to where we now say what's true for me may not necessarily be true for the next person because they have their own experiences and situations that have made them who they are, right? It's their own reality. And because of that complication that life brings, because life itself is complex, it then muffles all of those universal truths that exist outside of us. There is so much in this lifetime that goes into making a decision to where it isn't just this or that. And I feel like Kanye has forgotten the importance of that. So the same way that I feel like people are a little too rooted in this physical or human realm and not really focusing on all this other stuff outside of us, Kanye is here, but he's not rooted entirely in this world. I think that too much of his focus is outside of this world. And I don't think that, again, that he recognizes the importance of this world in this lifetime because this is what he is a part of. There are rules and there are guidelines that even if he doesn't care about, are put in place for people to follow. There are rules and guidelines for communication that even if he doesn't agree with and or adhere to, people do. And so, if he really wanted to, work on being able to reach as many people as he could, he would be more focused on filtering his thoughts so that, it then makes itself like readily available to people in this physical or human realm. But because he doesn't, right, people are always going to be offended by what he does. And with that being said, I don't want to outright say that Kanye is wrong because Kanye has already done what he's already done. He's going to continue to do what he does, right? And what he's created has happened for better or worse. But I feel like that this whole thing really just gets into that whole idea of it's not what you say, but it's how you say it, or it's how you go about saying it. Kanye can make his points, but if those points aren't in some way rooted or associated with this world or this lifetime, right? So if they're not filtered to where they can get into this world or this lifetime that other people that are a part of and that he himself is a part of, there is always going to be that disconnect. And so I thought that I would go ahead and talk about another example that Kanye had talked about in his TMZ interview that I would hope that, after hearing me talk about, this Kanye situation today, that you all would go out and watch. And I mean, like the whole thing is like 30 minutes instead of just, paying attention to the 2-minute thing that is in every headline. So, he basically talks about this idea of everybody, of how everybody is essentially living their lives for other people and how everybody is trying to make everyone else happy. He then goes on to give this example of how, you're a kid and you're playing and then you decide to jump on a coffee table. But then one of your elders comes over to you and says, get down, that is a coffee table. He then goes on to say that, you being a little kid, you don't care about coffee or the table, right? You're really just free in that sense to where you're doing what you're doing what it is that brings you joy, right? You're doing you're moving in the way that the spirit moves you. basically. But then as you get older, right, there are these ideas and these ideals that get ingrained into you that essentially take you away from your free and true self. Right. And then, go on to think about how, so they're basically obstructions to your joy. Right. And then go on to think about how then, you're 30, 40, 50 years old and how, you've experienced all of these other coffee tables in your life, or how you have all these coffee tables that are currently in your life. Kanye has a point. We do live our lives for other people. A lot of the beliefs, identities, traditions, mores, values, whatever you want to say, that we think to be true, that we think to be inherent with us, are not. We were not born knowing this stuff. These were things that were taught to us. And then, take it a bit further and then think about how those beliefs, those traditions, those values, and all those kinds of things have then in their own way created stress and or problems for you, right? Because you're not living up to a certain standard or identity, you then feel less than. Or because you don't hold the same belief as a bunch of other people, you are then ostracized. Kanye has a point. But what Kanye does not realize, especially when it comes to that obstruction of joy comment, is that there are rules and guidelines. And I'm not going to say that every single rule and guideline is like this, but there are rules and guidelines that are put in place that help us get through this life and protect ourselves from ourselves. Even if our own uninhibited state is our true form, it's also a really reckless form. And I'm not even saying reckless in relation to other people, because that then gets back into the idea of you living your life for other people. What I'm more so getting at is that it is reckless for you. Yes, they don't want you to stand on this coffee table because it's a coffee table, but also don't stand on the coffee table because you could hurt yourself, right? And I feel like even then with me saying that it does kind of get into this kind of wormhole kind of thinking, because even though I think like that point still remains, it also maybe gets into the idea of, well, maybe people just need to experience things for themselves instead of having other people tell them, right? Because how many times has someone told you not to do something and you still did it anyway? But then when you do it and you see that what it is that they said would happen, then that's when you actually learn from whatever it is that you're supposed to learn from. So like I said, I think that it kind of definitely gets into a cyclical kind of thinking, but I still do think that my point remains, which is the overarching point that there needs to be a balance that is recognized and understood on both sides. I think that people are too focused on this reality because of the proximity to us and to the people around us, but we're also neglecting the reality or realities that exist outside of us. And that is what then makes people focus on the theatrics of the situation more than the point that is attempting to be made. When it comes to Kanye, Kanye's focused on the other reality or realities, but he's also neglecting this reality that we're all in. And that is what then makes his method of communicating whatever point that he has as being viewed as being wrong by the majority. I think that once it's recognized that existing dually, or existing in two different ways is possible, and that by existing in two different ways, that one does not cancel out or negate the other, that you can do both, that is when real dialogue and change can happen. And so, in terms of Kanye's situation, I had a bunch of other stuff that I want to talk about. I wanted to talk about art. I wanted to talk about the media. I wanted to talk about the idea of the celebrity. I wanted to talk about publicity and marketing. I wanted to even talk about my own conclusions that I've come to because of this situation. But I don't know if you're paying attention to the time. I'm pretty much out of time. My 30 minutes are pretty much up. And so, yeah, that was the plan. Was to talk about everything, like the stuff that I talked about, and then those things that I listed. And I thought, I was optimistic. I had hoped that I was going to be able to condense my thoughts to where I could talk about everything. But once I got to around page 8, I realized that just was not possible and that I needed to come up with a new plan. So the new plan is that I'm going to do a part 2 next week. And I'm going to talk about every single thing that I just listed that I did not get to talk about today. So, yeah, that's pretty much the end of today's episode. If you enjoyed what it is that you heard today, make sure you tune into my show next week. I do this show every week, 12:30 to 1. Every Tuesday. Make sure that, like I said, you tune into next week, because I'm still going to be talking a lot about this Kanye situation. If I said anything that you agreed with, that enlightened you in some way, that made you question something, or that maybe you didn't agree with, let me know. Hit me up if you had any comments, questions, or concerns. Let me know. I know this is a pretty controversial topic. A lot of people have a lot of thoughts on it. And I know that what I said today doesn't necessarily fit the narrative of, the overall narrative of what has been talked about for this Kanye situation. So, if you had anything that you wanted to say, hit me up on Facebook at Jordan CHISLEY, or on Twitter at JORDI Reviews, and we can get these conversations going. But yeah, like I said, that's pretty much it for today's episode, and make sure you all tune in for part 2 next week. All right, bye.